I'd like to welcome everyone. Thank you for coming this evening, Easter Sunday, to the Sunday feast at the Hare Krishna Temple. We're very pleased to let you know that we have a special guest speaker, His Holiness Bir Krishna Maharaj. He's one of the governing body commissioners of our movement. He oversees temples in America and Fiji and other places in the world. And he's kindly taken a stopover. He's just here for about 36 hours. And he's sharing with us wisdom tonight from the Bhagavad Gita on compassion. So something very important in this world, and certainly on Easter, we think of compassion in terms of Lord Jesus. And in this Vaishnava tradition, compassion is really the key of our whole philosophy. So thank you, Maharaj, for joining us.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, do we have cartels like in New Year?
Yes.
Good to see everybody. Aloha. I used to spend a lot of time here. I used to be the GBC here many, many years ago. And I got attached to Hawaii. It's the nicest place in the world, Prabhupada said. He said, if there's any nice place in the material world, it's Hawaii. So you're all very fortunate. You all have good karma to be here. Or bhakti. So, all right, we'll chant Jai Radhamadava first. Thank you. That's fine. Cools you down.
Okay.
Jaya Radhamadava Kunda Bihari Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Paramahansa Satana Satushi Shimad. His Divine Grace Abhaya Charanada Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananda Goti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Saya Mukunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavanam Ki Jai, Mathuram Ki Jai, Jagannath Swami Ki Jai, Yamunamai Ki Jai, Shrimati Lasi Devi Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Hari. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swamini Tinamani Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaurvani Pacharni Nivashesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deja Tarni Jai. Panchatattva Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani Ki Jai. Somagana Timiranda Shah Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shigurave Namaha. So today I'd like to speak about compassion. How about that? And this is going to be not just from the Bhagavad Gita, but from all sorts of different stories. So we're going to be philosophical, but not too heavy with the philosophy. How about that? So, of course, today, for those who are Christians, it's a very significant day, Easter Sunday, and Jesus Christ is known as the epitome of compassion. Why? Because he gave himself to save everybody. And also, the final story, when he was crucified, he said to God, please forgive the people who crucified me, because they know not what they're doing. So, let's talk about what real compassion is. It's really important to analyze what compassion is, because there's real compassion, and there's phony or false compassion, or misplaced compassion. How about that? So, we're going to give several different ingredients that are necessary for real compassion. First of all, you have to be what we call para dukkha dukhi. Now, for those of you who don't understand that, that means you have to be more concerned with the happiness of others than your own happiness. Now, there's one devotee in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes that took that to an extreme. His name was Vasudev Dutt. Now, we're not asking anybody to come to that platform, and I'll explain what I mean. Vasudev Dutt went to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he said to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, I have a request. And Lord Chaitanya said, what is your request? And he said, I want to take everyone's karma so they can all go back to Godhead. Now, Prabhupada remarks that's better than practically any religious preceptor in any other religion. We're not going to be specific about it. Because many religious preceptors, gurus, leaders, saints, incarnations, they help the people who are their followers, their disciples. But Vasudev Dutt, he said, I want everyone to go back to Godhead, and I will take their karma. And Lord Chaitanya said, you are personified compassion. So he said, don't worry, you won't have to do it. So the problem, the point is about compassion, even if you feel like that, you don't have to take everyone's karma. And also, if you're compassionate, oh, please turn the phones off. If you're compassionate and you chant Hare Krishna, you don't have to worry about it. That's why when anyone asks me for compassion, I chant Hare Krishna to protect myself. Or I touch their heads. You know, sometimes sannyasi, people touch your feet, if you're a sannyasi. And so Prabhupada said if you touch someone's head, the karma goes back to them. So I am not so compassionate. But that's the first.
Jack.
You have to be honest, you know. I'm not going to take everyone's karma. I got enough trouble with my own. So that's the first point. One has to really feel caring for other people. It's not about you, it's about them. You know, sometimes we go to someone and they're suffering, you say, oh, I feel so bad about your suffering. But that's not compassion. Oh, please turn off the phone. Okay, thank you. So, that's not compassion, to feel bad about someone else, but to actually be concerned is compassion. To try to understand them, to try to help them is compassion. Second item of real compassion is knowing what's best for the person. Otherwise, it's misplaced compassion. Srila Prabhupada told an interesting story. He said one time there was a little boy who had a brother. And his brother had some liver disease. And for those of you who don't know, when you have a liver disease, you're not supposed to eat, what, fried foods. Will get hurt, or gallbladder disease. I mean, I know people have gallbladder disease and they have gallstones. It's really painful. But this little boy who had the disease asked his brother, please get me some pakoras. For those of you who don't know what pakoras are, that's anyway, something fried. Hopefully in ghee, not in motor oil. But anyway, because Prabhupada said we should always cook in ghee. But anyway, so please get me some pakoras. So this older brother got the younger brother who had a liver disease pakoras. And then he got sicker. So in other words, if we want to help people, not only do we have to feel compassion for them, that was number one, but we have to know what's best for them. And in Krishna consciousness, that's really important. That means we should understand how to help people should be connected to Krishna, bring them closer to Krishna. For example, if I give food to people, I'll make sure it's what? Anyone know? No one knows. Starts with a P.
Bhakti.
Prasad. Bhakti, you're right. Because if I just give them food because they're hungry and it's not offered to Krishna, what do they get? What do I get? Karma. Karma. So you really have to know the science of helping people. I mean, whether you're helping people spiritually or you're helping people materially. I'll give you an example of material helping doesn't really help. Let's say someone falls down, not spiritually, but trips and falls down a flight of stairs. So if you try to pick them up and help them, that could actually further damage their spine. So what do? You call for what? EMT, emergency medical technician. So it really is important to have knowledge. That's the point I'm making. Spiritually, especially, it's important to have knowledge and realization of what's best for that particular person in that particular instance. So if we don't fulfill those two requisites or requirements, we can't really consider that it is compassion. And the motive, getting back to the motive, has to be really to help them spiritually. As in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about different motives for compassion or for charity. He says there's charity in the mode of ignorance, which is given basically a wrong person, wrong time, wrong place. Charity in the mode of passion, which is given because you want to get something from it. Either good karma you get from it, or whatever. And charity in the mode of goodness, which is done at the proper place, time, and circumstance. So we should try to cultivate in our own personal lives the mode of goodness. Because the mode of goodness is a place where we can take up Krishna consciousness. So, very, very careful about this. So we find many other examples in the Shastras where compassion is not in the mode of goodness, or compassion is not transcendental. One example in the Bhagavad Gita is Arjuna. Now, you all know in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna was confronted with a dilemma because he was confronted with his family members who he had to fight. His grandfather, cousin brothers, and other family members. And he was feeling some compassion, but it wasn't, as we talked about those two principles, it wasn't in knowledge of what was best. And secondly, it was about himself, because he was feeling compassionate towards them, even though they were destructive of society. But because they were related to him, of course that's called nepotism, in case someone's interested. Sometimes we see someone who's in charge of a government, a president, sorry, I don't want to make any direct references, but we see a president or a prime minister who is very compassionate, not compassionate, but he gives positions to his relatives, to his friends, without considering what's best for the citizens. So Arjuna was being compassionate towards his family members and refusing to fight. And that was, in the scriptures, misplaced compassion, or not actual compassion. Another example is grandfather Bhishma. Some of you may know about grandfather Bhishma. He was on the opposite side of the battle of Kurukshetra. He was Arjuna's grandfather. And he, out of compassion, it's described in the Bhagavad Gita, blew his conch shell to give assurance to Duryodhana and company. So that was also misplaced compassion. And here's an example where misplaced compassion and understanding gets one in trouble, even more trouble. There's the story of Bharat Maharaj. Anyone's heard of Bharat Maharaj here? Bharat Maharaj was a great saint. He was king. Okay. He was a king, and he gave it all up to perform spiritual life. And being a king, you could turn your chair a little different so you're not backing into Prabhupada like that. That's my concern. So being a king, he eventually decided to renounce everything and take up spiritual life completely, 100%, and become a great saint, and he made a lot of progress in spiritual life. But then, out of compassion, because he saw a little baby deer that was motherless because the mother died, he not only took care of the deer, but he became so emotionally attached to it that he was not only concerned with the deer's welfare, but he was concerned with his own happiness with the deer. You know, we find this in many of our relationships, that we're more concerned with what the other person or other object does for us rather than what we can do for them. Of course, there's a famous statement by a past president of the United States. Don't ask what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. I'm sure you've heard that before. So, in other words, real compassion is based on love. Love is based on the point that we don't want anything personally from the person or the animal or whatever entity we're helping. That's real love, and that's where real compassion manifests. So sometimes in the scriptures, we find stories, instances of an interaction between a great saint and an individual where it appears the great saint is not compassionate, but in fact they are compassionate. So I'm pointing out that compassion is not so easily understood. Because sometimes you will find a great personality cursing someone out of compassion. You may say, oh my God, how can you curse someone out of compassion? I'll give you an example. Narada Muni, who some of you may have heard of, he, in many instances, curses individuals. One famous case is that there were two sons of Kuvera. Kuvera, of course, is the treasurer of the demigods. And these two sons, their names were Mani Griva and Nala Kuvera. And they were enjoying some heavenly happiness, higher than Hawaii, actually. They were in a place called the Mandakini Ganges, enjoying, and they were nude. They were, anyway, nude. They didn't have any clothes on. So Narada Muni comes, and instead of covering themselves, they just like raised their hands, and, said, "Hi, Narada Muni," or whatever. They were not at all modest. And Narada Muni, what does he do? He curses them. You should become what? Trees. I mean, what an instance of compassion. But you should become trees in the courtyard of Nanda Maharaj, who in the future would be Krishna's father. And then you'll get liberated by Krishna. So sometimes compassion means that someone is put in a very difficult circumstance. So they'll learn a lesson and ultimately come out better on the other side. It's interesting, isn't it? How we can think that's very uncompassionate. Narada Muni is giving in to his anger. He's not giving in to his anger. When we get angry, we're angry because we're frustrated. And when we yell at someone, it's because we're frustrated. We want to get even. We want to teach them a lesson, which never works. But when a great personality, like Srila Prabhupada, Narada Muni, would get angry, it's for the benefit of the person. Even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exhibited this sometimes. I'll give you two examples. One example is when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu performed his non-violent protest. What was the non-violent protest? The Qazi, the Muslim leader, would not allow them to do Sankirtan, and he actually broke some mridanga drums. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu got together all the devotees, this great, what's called Naga Kirtan. And they all marched to the Qazi's house in the middle of the night with torches. And when they got there, they destroyed the Qazi's garden. And previously, the Qazi had actually been, let us say, in his dream, attacked by Lord Nrsingadev and had his, let's say, chest marked with the claws of Lord Nrsingadev. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu goes there, and the Qazi is very frightened. But that fear that the Qazi is experiencing is his lesson. That Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and you better be careful. And so it rectifies, and he becomes a devotee. Amazing, isn't it? Another instance with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is that once upon a time there was a devotee. His name was Gopal Chapala. Okay, children. That's all right. I'm used to them. His name was Gopal Chapala. And he offended another devotee, a person, Gopal Chapala, and he offended another devotee named Shivas Thakur. The way he offended this devotee is he made this devotee seem to be worshipping the demigods instead of Krishna. I'm not going to get into the details. But then, because he offended the devotee, he got leprosy. And then he went to Lord Chaitanya, who was supposed to be what? Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate. Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaurajase Namaha. For those of you who don't know what that means, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the most munificent appearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Why? Because he's giving love of Godhead out freely. So this particular individual, Gopal Chapala, he went to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and he said, "Save me from this leprosy." Lord Chaitanya could have done that out of compassion. But instead, out of compassion, what did Lord Chaitanya say? Does anyone know? He said, "You're going to be bitten by these same worms for the next, so many births, thousands of births or millions of births." Uh-oh. Being cursed by Lord Chaitanya. Yet, what happened? He realized through that heavy lesson that he better surrender to Krishna and beg for forgiveness from Srivas Thakur, and he did. And ultimately he was forgiven and freed from leprosy by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy. So, this is very nice. So we gave some examples of real compassion, false compassion, people mistaking something else, let's say something that didn't appear to be compassion, as mistaking something that appeared to be violent in the wrong way and was actually compassionate. So now we're going to talk about why should we be compassionate, or what's in it for me, as they say. And I'm going to read a verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam says, "One who has no compassion is to be pitied. O demigods, one who has no compassion for humanity in its suffering and does not sacrifice his impermanent body for the higher causes of religious principles or eternal glory is certainly pitied even by the immovable beings." Another interesting verse in the Bhagavatam. "One who's interested only in his own salvation is not as advanced in Krishna consciousness as one who feels compassion for others and who therefore propagates the Krishna conscious movement." Of course, Krishna says in the Gita, "There's no one as dear to me as he who teaches this Bhagavad Gita to the devotees," which everybody's a devotee inherently. And Krishna says there will never be one as dear to him as someone who teaches this knowledge. And here's a guarantee. Prabhupada says, "Such an advanced devotee will never fall down, for Krishna will give him special protection." Wouldn't we all want special protection? Wow. Special protection. Give an example of that. Haridas Thakur. He was beaten in 21 marketplaces because they were trying to get him to stop chanting Hare Krishna. That's a test. It won't happen to any of you, don't worry. I hope not. Never know. So anyway, he was beaten in 21 marketplaces. And after that beating, of course, he manifested his great yogic power and wasn't killed. But in any case, Lord Chaitanya revealed to Haridas Thakur that he, Lord Chaitanya, had accepted the beating on Haridas Thakur's behalf. And Krishna will always protect one who is compassionate. And that's what Prabhupada said. Such an advanced devotee will never, I'm reading it again, will never fall down, for Krishna will give him special protection. That is listen to this particular sentence. That is the sum and substance of the Krishna consciousness movement. Let me read that again. Because Prabhupada encouraged everybody to ultimately become a teacher of Krishna consciousness, bring other people to Krishna consciousness. And of course we call that guru, but it's not that everyone will be initiating other people. But Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted everyone, what it Amare Gai Guru Hoy Tore Desh, to be compassionate and to help others. So, let me read that again. Such an advanced devotee will never fall down, for Krishna will give him special protection. That is the sum and substance of the Krishna consciousness movement. So then the next question that arises, I'm looking at the time, so we're running out, is how can we develop that compassion? You know, right now we may have to be very honest. I'm not going to sacrifice myself for others. I just want to eat prasadam and be happy. Chant Hare Krishna. Well, you can be happy. Actually, compassion is the natural condition of each and every one of us, the natural happy condition. I'll give you a practical example from the material world. That once upon a time, and this involves an animal. Hare Krishna, please come in. Once upon a time, there was a lady who was scuba diving. I think you all know what scuba diving is. You're in Hawaii. So the lady was scuba diving, and she noticed this whale kept pushing her, nudging her. She was thinking, why does the whale nudge me? Because whales don't eat people generally, except for killer whales. So this whale was actually pushing her, or nudging her. And then she noticed the whale was actually protecting her from the shark that was behind the whale. So it's a natural quality that's built into the soul that gives us the greatest happiness. Greatest happiness. So, how do we develop it? First of all, associate and serve advanced personalities, advanced spiritual personalities. And of course, you may say, where is that advanced spiritual personality? We are very fortunate in the Krishna consciousness movement to have the association of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And every one of us who is a member of the Krishna consciousness movement has the opportunity to connect with Prabhupada. You may say, well, Prabhupada has left this planet. The great Acharya Bhaktivinoda Thakur states, he reasons ill who says that Vaishnavas die when thou art living, still and sound. So by participating in this movement in some way, doing some service, coming here, even taking prasadam on Sunday, which I'm sure you're all looking forward to, or chanting before the deities, or during the week, volunteering something, isn't it? Then you're connecting to Prabhupada and getting Prabhupada's association, and Mahat Seva Mahuravi Muktes. That means by association with a great devotee like Prabhupada, you get Krishna consciousness. There's another statement from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Sadhu Sangha, Sarvasastra Lavamatra Sadhu Sangha, Sarvasiddhi Hoy. A little bit of association, a moment's association. And, okay, that's one thing we can do. And the second thing we can do, it may be a little harder, is we should learn to control our senses. In other words, we should be understanding that we don't have any enemies in this world. It's described about a Vaishnava, a Jata Shatru, he has no enemies. His enemy is never born. So we should understand that actually everyone is what? Our brother and sister. Just like in the Christian liturgy, you have St. Francis. Everyone's heard of St. Francis? St. Francis of Assisi? No. He used to call all the entities his brothers and sisters. And Srila Prabhupada, when he heard this, he said, this is first-class God consciousness. Remember that. This is first-class God consciousness. No enemies. Everyone is my brother and my sister, or my sister. In this way, I'm connected with them. Of course, the Vedic literatures, Ishopanishad says the same thing. Yastu sarvani bhutani atmane vadupashati. Sarva bhuteshu chatmanam tato devigigupshate. So, what does that mean? one should see everyone connected to Krishna. Everyone is Krishna's part and parcel, only Vamsa Jiva. Okay, Jiva Buddha Sanatana. And so we're all related. You know, I travel around the world. I was just in Fiji, where everyone practically everyone I was talking to comes from Indian extraction. And here I am in America for a day or so. And, you know, it's people from different cultures, different races. But we're all brothers and sisters. This is the true vision of equality which Srila Prabhupada has given us. You know, the peace formula, true vision of equality. You don't have to make any other adjustments. You see like that and you have peace between people and you can love everyone. And Prabhupada gives another thing we should do. He says when we see a person who is more qualified than ourselves, another way we can achieve compassion, we should feel pleased rather than envious. And when we meet someone less qualified, we should be compassionate towards them. And someone equally qualified, we make friendship. And Prabhupada says, or actually Bhagavatam says, in this way we can avoid the threefold miseries in this material world. So, in other words, there's advantages to being compassionate, there's an easy way to become compassionate, you become happier if you become compassionate, and it's very important to exercise compassion with knowledge. Therefore, we advise reading Srila Prabhupada's books, reading the Vedic literatures, understanding what true compassion is, associating with the devotees, and this way you can become Krishna conscious very quickly. So right now it is 6:30 according to the clock, so time myself pretty good. So anybody have any questions or comments? Yes, sir.
You mentioned that one way that we can become more compassionate is by associating with Prabhupada.
Yeah.
So my question would be, wouldn't it be better maybe to have like an association directly with Krishna?
That's actually a good point. Well, what does Krishna say? Let's quote him in the Adi Purana. He says, one who says he is my devotee is not my devotee, but one who says a devotee of my devotee is my devotee. Just like when you're approaching a very important man, you may not be able to go see him, but if you make friends, even if you make friends with his dog, then the man will appreciate you very much. Prabhupada, anyway. So that's our method. And also, Krishna is so transcendental, so much above our ability, Atakshi Krishna Namani, Nabhavet Kraimandriya, Sevam Ke Jiva Swame Visparachida, that we have to approach him through his transparent medium, the pure devotee, the Supreme Personality of God. So anyway, we have to end here. I know it was quick. Time for Gaura Arti. All glories to His divine grace.